I learned very early that in my family, gifts were never really about generosity. They were about ranking. Who mattered most? Who deserved more? Who was special? But nothing prepared me for the day my aunt took my $500 gift, the one I worked overtime to afford, and rewrapped it for someone else like I didn't exist at all. I still remember the moment it started. My phone buzzed in the break room at work. A text from my aunt. "Hey, sweetie, your cousin's birthday is this weekend. Don't forget, big milestone." I stared at the screen, already exhausted. Rent was due. My car needed new tires. My fridge was half empty. But I also knew how my family worked. Show up with something modest and you were ungrateful. Show up with something thoughtful but inexpensive and they'd whisper about how some people just don't try. I sighed and told myself it's fine. It's family. Do the right thing. I picked out the gift carefully. A limited edition tablet she'd wanted for months. I used my entire bonus. $500. My chest hurt when I swiped my card. My aunt's eyes lit up when I handed it to her early so she could add it to the table later. She hugged me too tightly like she was squeezing gratitude out of me. "You're such a sweetheart," she said. "This will mean so much." I believed her. I really did. Party was loud. Glitter. Balloons. Music blasting. My cousin, the favorite, floated around in a new designer dress. People took turns placing their gifts on the decorated table like offerings at a shrine. I waited for mine. I waited for my aunt to bring it out. Instead, I watched something strange happen. She carried out a perfectly wrapped box. My wrapping paper. My ribbon. My handwriting gone. A new tag. From Aunt Claire, it read. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling through ice. I thought maybe I misunderstood. Maybe she mixed up labels. Maybe there was some explanation that wouldn't make my chest burn. But when the time came to open gifts, my cousin squealed as she ripped the paper. Tablet gleamed under the lights. Everyone gasped. "Aunt Claire, you're amazing. You always go above and beyond." My aunt smiled like she'd just solved world hunger. She even fake blushed. "Well, you know me. Anything for my favorite girl." I sat quietly in the corner, hands folded so tight they hurt. Nobody looked at me. Nobody asked. Not even my parents. And the worst part wasn't the money. It wasn't even the lie. It was the familiar ache rising in my chest. The message I'd heard all my life, loud and clear. You are here to give. They are here to receive. You are support. They are center stage. That night, I drove home with the radio off. My phone buzzed with photos from the party. Everyone smiling. My aunt standing proudly behind her gift. My cousin hugging her like a hero. I scrolled and scrolled until one thought landed hard and heavy. This wasn't carelessness. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. A line had been crossed again. And for the first time, I felt something different than sadness. I felt anger. The kind that doesn't burn wild. Kind that wakes you up. The next morning, the anger was still there. Not loud. Not explosive. Just steady. Like a drumbeat in the background reminding me that something wasn't right. I replayed the party in my head while I made coffee. The flashing cameras. The applause. My aunt soaking up the praise like sunlight. Me shrinking smaller and smaller in my own chair. I tried to gaslight myself the way I'd been trained to my whole life. Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it's silly to care. Maybe I'm being dramatic. But every time I tried to bury the feeling, the same thought pushed back. I worked for that. I sacrificed for that. And she erased me like I was disposable. At work, I could barely concentrate. Emails blurred. My hands hovered over the keyboard, useless. Finally, during lunch, I opened my phone and scrolled through the group chat again. There it was. A photo of my aunt with the tablet captioned, "So worth every penny." Comments poured in. "You spoiled her. You're the best aunt ever. I wish you were my aunt." I stared at the screen until my eyes stung. Not one person asked who really bought it. Not one person wondered how she had suddenly afforded something so expensive. 'Cause of course she could afford it. She was the generous one, the favorite, the reliable hero in every story our family told. And I was the background character who learned to clap. Around 3 in the afternoon, I finally did something I'd never done before. I texted her. Nothing dramatic. No paragraphs. Just, "Hey, can we talk about the gift?" 3 dots popped up. Disappeared. Popped up again. My heart raced. Then her reply came. "Sweetie, don't start. It was easier this way." Easier. The word hit like a slap. Easier for who? Easier for her to look good. Easier for her to avoid spending money. Easier to use me like a wallet with feelings attached. I took a breath and typed slowly, carefully, like I was defusing a bomb. "I spent $500. I worked overtime for that. And you put your name on it." Another pause. Then, "Well, she appreciates things more when they come from me. You wouldn't understand. You don't have kids." My jaw literally dropped. There it was. The justification. Wrapped in superiority. Tied with a bow of condescension. For a second, the old version of me tried to take over. Apologize. Back down. Make it okay. But something steadier rose instead. "I do understand," I wrote. "I understand that you took something that wasn't yours and erased the person who gave it." She responded fast this time. "Wow. Ungrateful much. I included your gift with mine. We're family. You're supposed to help." I could almost hear her voice. Sweet. Sharp. Manipulative. The kind of tone that makes you question your own memory. I stared at the messages. My chest tightened. My hands shook. I felt 12 years old again. Small. Powerless. But then another thought cut through the panic. If I stay silent, this becomes the standard. I didn't argue further. I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I simply typed, "Please bring the gift back or pay me back." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. She didn't reply for hours. Dinner passed. The sky turned dark. I started to wonder if I had gone too far. Then, finally, my phone rang. Her name flashed across the screen. I swallowed hard and answered. Her voice was icy. "You embarrassed me," she said. Not a hello. Not a question. Just accusation. "You made me look like a thief." I closed my eyes. "I didn't make you look like anything," I said quietly. "You did that when you took credit for something that wasn't yours." She laughed bitterly. "You always were sensitive. You should be thanking me. That gift looked better coming from me. People expect more from me. From you, it would have looked cheap." That sentence burned so deeply I felt it in my bones. Cheap. Not the gift. Me. That was the truth she finally said out loud. I realized in that moment that the gift was never the issue. It was the narrative. In our family, she was the giver, the star, the adored one. I was the helper in the shadows. And stepping out of that role threatened everything. I took a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Then I guess I don't want to play that role anymore," I said. "So again, bring it back or send me the money." Silence. Long, heavy. Then she snapped, "Fine. I'll drop off cash tomorrow. But don't expect anything from me again." And before I could respond, she hung up. My heart pounded. My hands were trembling. But underneath the fear was something new. Relief. I had finally chosen myself, even if my voice shook. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and thought about every time I'd let things slide. Every party. Every holiday. Every moment where someone else's comfort mattered more than my dignity. I always convinced myself it was less stressful to stay quiet. But staring into the dark, I finally admitted the truth. Staying quiet wasn't peace. It was self-abandonment. And I was done abandoning myself. The next day, I barely slept. Morning light crept through the blinds like it was hesitant to enter the room, and honestly, I understood the hesitation. My mind had replayed the phone call over and over again. Her voice. The way she said cheap. The way she made it sound like doing the bare minimum for me was some kind of charity work. I dragged myself to the kitchen, poured coffee, and sat at the table staring at the mug like caffeine might magically fix generational dysfunction. It didn't, but it helped me stay upright. My phone buzzed around 11. A short message. I'm outside. I felt something twist inside my stomach. Not fear. Not exactly. More like bracing for impact. I slipped on my shoes and stepped outside. She stood by her car, sunglasses on, lips tight like she was attending a funeral for her reputation. Without saying a word, she held out an envelope. Thick. Heavy. Cash. I took it. 500, she said, clipped. Happy now. Not a question. A verdict. I nodded slowly. Thank you. Her eyebrows shot up like I'd insulted her. Don't thank me, she snapped. This is ridiculous. Family helps family. You made it transactional. That stung. 'Cause it had always been transactional. Just not in my favor. I looked at her for a long moment. The aunt who used to braid my hair. Who used to slip me candy and whisper secrets. Who turned every favor I gave into a story about her kindness. I didn't make it transactional, I said quietly. You did when you took something I worked for and made it about you. Her jaw clenched. You're overreacting. Classic line. The reset button. The phrase designed to shrink me back into silence. For years it worked. This time it didn't. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just finally noticed. She scoffed, climbed into her car, and rolled down the window. You shouldn't air family business, she warned. People talk. I almost laughed. 'Cause that was the heart of it. Image. Appearances. Reputation polished until the truth disappeared. I'm not airing anything, I answered. I'm just not lying anymore. She rolled up the window and drove off, leaving the faint smell of expensive perfume and resentment behind her. I went back inside, sat on the couch, and opened the envelope. I counted slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 500. Every bill felt heavier than it should have. This wasn't just money. This was years of quiet, swallowed anger being acknowledged, even if she'd never admit it. I placed the envelope on the table and just stared at it. My hands were shaking again. But not from fear. From release. My phone buzzed again. A family group notification. I hesitated, then opened it. My aunt had posted a photo. Not of the gift. Not of the party. Picture of flowers in her kitchen. Caption: Sometimes people disappoint you. Lesson learned. Replies came instantly. Who hurt you? You don't deserve that. Some people forget who fed them growing up. I felt my throat tighten. It was about me. Of course it was. And there I was, cast again as the villain in a story where the generous adult had apparently been wronged. For a moment I thought about jumping in, explaining everything, posting screenshots, writing paragraphs. But then I stopped. I imagined my breath. I imagined my peace. I imagined the exhaustion of defending myself to people who had already chosen their favorite character. I locked my screen and set the phone face down. Silence filled the room in a way that felt new. Not empty. Protective. Tasha came over that evening with takeout noodles and her usual hurricane of energy. "You look like someone removed a 10-pound weight from your chest and replaced it with another 10-pound weight labeled feelings," she said, kicking off her shoes. I laughed weakly. "She brought the money," I said. "Cash." Tasha's eyes widened. "No way." "Did lightning strike immediately after?" "Not yet," I said. "But she's already painting me as the villain." Tasha shrugged. "Let her. Villains are just heroes from the wrong narrator." I blinked. "That doesn't make sense." She grinned. "Exactly. And neither does your family's logic. So stop trying to make it make sense." We ate in silence for a moment. The good kind of silence. Warm. Safe. Then she asked, "How do you feel?" It wasn't a casual question. It landed. Heavy. Honest. I thought about it. "Relieved," I said. "Sad. Proud. And weirdly older." She nodded. "Yeah. Setting boundaries ages you 10 emotional years in one day." I smiled. Then my eyes started to sting unexpectedly. "It shouldn't have been that hard," I whispered. "It was just the truth." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "And that's exactly why it was hard. Because you came from people who treat truth like a threat." The words sank into me slowly. True. Too true. That night, as I got ready for bed, I noticed something different in the mirror. Not my face. Not my hair. My posture. I wasn't leaning forward like I was apologizing for existing. I was standing. Straight. Quiet. Present. Before turning off the light, I gathered the envelope, opened my laptop, and transferred the money into my savings. Not emergency funds. Freedom funds. Not for crisis. For choice. For doors that might open later. Then I closed the laptop, exhaled deeply, and let myself sleep. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. But because for the first time in a long time I felt like I had chosen myself, and the world hadn't ended. Just got clearer. The next morning, the peace didn't last long. By 8:30, my phone lit up again with the familiar family notification tone. That sound used to make me feel connected. Now it felt like a fire alarm. I hesitated, then unlocked the screen. A new message from my aunt. Direct. Private. "We need to talk." No greeting. No punctuation. Just that. My shoulders tightened immediately. I typed back about what? 3 blinking dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then finally, "Your mother is upset. She said you embarrassed the family." I call her. There it was. The baton pass. The invisible chain being pulled. Years of trained obedience flared up in my chest. Call. Explain. Soften. Make it easier for everyone but myself. I closed my eyes, inhaled slowly, and then did something that would have been impossible for the old me. I put the phone down. I didn't call. Not right away. I let the discomfort sit there like a storm cloud I refused to chase. 10 minutes later, Mom called me instead. Course she did. The ring sounded louder than usual. I answered. "Hi." Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "So," she said in that tight voice she used when she wanted to sound calm but was actually furious. "You caused quite a mess." My heart thumped. "By asking for my money back." A beat. "By making a scene," she corrected. "Your aunt is devastated. She said you accused her of stealing like some stranger off the street." I kept my voice steady. "I didn't accuse her." She took something that was mine and gave it away. That's not generosity. That's disrespect. Mom sighed, long and theatrical, like she was carrying the weight of the world. You always twist things. Always the victim. The words landed like cold water. I'd heard them before. Many times. They were her reset button. The story she preferred. I swallowed. I'm not the victim, I said quietly. I'm the person who finally stopped accepting crumbs. Silence stretched. I could hear dishes clinking somewhere in the background. The hum of their refrigerator. The distant bark of a dog. Life going on over there while my boundaries were on trial. Families share, she finally said. That money was staying in the family. Your cousin needed it more. My jaw tightened. Mom, it was a gift to me. For my future. You don't get to redistribute other people's gifts and then call it generosity. Another sigh. You've changed, she said. Not as a compliment. As an accusation. You've become cold. I almost laughed. Cold. 'Cause warmth in our family meant self-erasure. Meant smiling through disrespect. Meant saying thank you when someone crossed a boundary and called it love. No, I answered slowly. I've become clear. She didn't like that. I heard it in the sharp inhale. Well, she snapped, don't expect us to forget this. Your aunt feels humiliated. She said she'll think twice before giving you anything again. I stared at the wall. Good, I said. Then she won't take anything again either. There was a stunned pause. I realized in that moment that I wasn't trying to win. I wasn't trying to convince. I wasn't trying to be understood. I was simply drawing a line and letting it exist. Conversation ended with a clipped fine and the hollow click of disconnection. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I waited for the familiar guilt to crash over me. It didn't. Instead, there was a quiet space inside my chest. Not empty. Not numb. Just grounded. Tasha found me later sitting at the table again, staring into nothing. Processing, she asked. I nodded. Yeah. And I'm not drowning. Which is new. She smiled. Welcome to boundaries. They don't always feel good. But they feel honest. We went for a walk. Nothing dramatic. Just sidewalks, trees, the sound of distant cars. Ordinary life. But even that felt different. Like I had shifted slightly inside my own body, and now the world rested on me differently. Halfway down the block, I said, Do you think I was harsh? Tasha shrugged. I think you were precise. And people who benefit from your silence always call precision cruelty. Her words lingered. Precise. Not cruel. Clear. Not cold. That afternoon, I turned my phone on silent and worked on small, ordinary things. Laundry. Dishes. Emails. Real life. And in between tasks, I kept noticing something I hadn't felt in years. Face. Room to breathe. Room to think without someone else's expectations crammed into every inch. Later that evening, another message appeared. This time from my cousin, the one who opened the gift at her party. Hey, it read. I had no idea the money was originally yours. I thought she bought it. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen for a long time. My chest softened. It's not your fault, I typed back. Enjoy your gift. Just take care of it. It came at a cost. A minute later, a heart emoji appeared. Simple. Honest. No performance. And weirdly, that mattered more to me than all the scripted family speeches I had ever heard growing up. That night before bed, I stood by the window and watched the city lights blink quietly. I thought about the version of me from a few months ago, the one who would have apologized, smoothed everything over, convinced herself it wasn't worth it. I barely recognized her. Not because she was weak, but because she didn't know she had options. She thought staying silent was the only way to keep love around. Now I understood something terrifying and freeing at the same time. Real love doesn't require you to disappear. I turned off the light, crawled into bed, and for the first time in a long time, sleep didn't feel like a stranger. Felt like a guest I had invited in willingly. 2 days passed before the next wave hit. I was at work, finishing up an email when my phone started buzzing nonstop. Not calls, notifications, group chat again. My stomach tightened the second I saw the preview. Family meeting tonight. Those words used to sound like tradition. Now they sounded like court summons. Growing up, family meetings were never meetings. They were lectures dressed up like democracy. The adults spoke. We nodded. And if you disagreed, suddenly it became a conversation about respect. I stared at my screen for a moment, then locked it and went back to work. For 3 more hours, I pretended spreadsheets mattered more than emotional landmines. When I finally clocked out and got home, Tasha was already at the table with 2 mugs of tea. You saw it, she said. Not a question. I nodded. You going? I shrugged. If I don't, I'm dramatic. If I do, I'm confrontational. She smirked. And if you show up as yourself, I exhaled slowly. Then I'm honest. And that's what scares them most. We both laughed quietly. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes laughter is easier than grieving the truth. 7 o'clock came fast. I joined the video call, heart pounding in my ears. Faces appeared one by one like characters in a play I'd seen 1,000 times. Mom, Dad, Aunt, 2 uncles. A couple of cousins muted in the background, pretending not to listen but clearly invested. My name flashed on the screen. She's here, someone whispered. Performance began. Mom started first. Of course. Calm tone. Careful words. We just want to clear the air, she said. There's been tension. Misunderstandings. Hurt feelings. Sounded almost compassionate. Till the next sentence. And most of it started with your behavior. There it was. The verdict before the trial. I swallowed. I set a boundary, I said evenly. That's not behavior. That's self-respect. Dad leaned forward. Nobody is saying you can't have feelings. But the way you handled it, public, dramatic, humiliating, that wasn't right. I frowned. Public? You mean in our living room? With only family there? He didn't answer. Because the truth didn't fit the narrative. My aunt spoke next. Tears in her eyes. Camera angled perfectly. I have given you so much over the years, she said softly. And this is how you repay me. The guilt grenade. Familiar. Heavy. Effective once. I inhaled slowly. You've done nice things, I agreed. And I've done a lot too. Watched kids. Helped move houses. Designed invitations. Showed up every time you needed something. But those aren't debts. They're love. And love doesn't give you permission to disrespect people. Call went quiet for a second. A rare silence. Then someone muttered, She's been reading internet psychology. I almost laughed. Because yes, I had been reading. And healing. And learning language for things I had only felt as confusion before. Mom's voice hardened. In this family, we take care of each other. That money went to your cousin. She needed it more. A wedding is important. I stared at the screen. So is my life, I said quietly. So are my plans. So is my fetida. My uncle chimed in for the first time. You're young. You'll make more. I looked straight into the camera. That's not the point. The point is you took something that wasn't yours to give. He rolled his eyes. You're making a big deal out of nothing. And there it was. The phrase that had escorted every painful memory in my childhood. I felt something steady rise inside me. Not rage. Not shame. Just clarity. To you, it's nothing, I said. Because it didn't hurt you. They all shifted uncomfortably. Not because they agreed, but because I refused to play my old role. Conversations swirled for nearly an hour. Blame. Deflection. We meant well. You misunderstood. Family first. Over and over. Each sentence tried to nudge me back into the mold. Each word asked me to shrink. But something in me had grown past fitting. Finally, Mom delivered the closing statement. We love you. But you embarrassed us. Apologize so we can move on. I looked at the mosaic of faces. People I had loved. People who had hurt me. People who may never understand. And I said calmly, no. The shock rippled across their screens like static. No, I repeated. I won't apologize for asking to be treated fairly. I won't apologize for having boundaries. I won't apologize for refusing to disappear just because it's convenient for you. Aunt's lips pressed into a thin line. Dad shook his head. Someone exhaled loudly. I thought the room, even the virtual one, might explode. Instead, it deflated. They murmured. They shifted. They scrambled for control. But something fundamental had changed. I wasn't arguing. I wasn't begging. I wasn't justifying. I was done performing. If you want to move forward, I added, voice steady, it starts with honesty. You took something from me. It hurt. And instead of owning it, you tried to shame me for noticing. Silence again. Longer this time. Not agreement, but impact. Then Mom spoke softly, almost fragile. We'll talk later. Click. Call ended. Preen dark. My reflection stared back at me, surprised, exhausted, alive. When it was over, I didn't tremble. My hands didn't shake. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself water, and sat with the quiet. Tasha peeked around the corner. Still standing. I nodded. Still standing. And for the first time in years, that felt like victory. The quiet after the call felt strange. Not empty. Not hostile. Just different. Like a room that had finally been aired out after years of stale air. I sat there for a while, letting my heart slow down, letting my thoughts catch up with what my mouth had just done. I kept waiting for the crash. The guilt. The spiral. The familiar voice in my head saying, you went too far. You ruined everything. But it didn't come. Instead, another voice, unfamiliar but steady, whispered, you told the truth. And somehow that felt like oxygen. That felt like permission. The next morning I woke up lighter. Not happy. Not triumphant. Just lighter. I made breakfast without rushing. I took an extra minute to stand by the window with my coffee and let the sunlight actually hit my face. Then my phone buzzed. Not the family tone. Just a regular text. Tasha. How's your boundary hangover? I smiled. Surprisingly mild, I typed back. Might even function today. She replied with a string of confetti emojis and a gif of someone dramatically fainting. Typical. Comforting. Normal. I needed normal. I needed reminders that life existed beyond family politics. That my world could be bigger than their approval. Around lunchtime, an email arrived. Subject line, follow-up. My stomach dipped when I saw my aunt's name. I opened it slowly, half prepared for a novel-length guilt trip. But it was short. Hope you're well. I want to put this behind us. Let's not let money come between family. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a tidy bow tied around a mess she refused to see. I read it twice. Then a third time. Years ago, I would have replied immediately. Of course. I love you. We're fine. I would have rushed to restore peace. Their peace. Not mine. Now I stared at the blinking cursor and realized I didn't owe anyone emotional patchwork. So I typed slowly. I also want peace. But peace requires honesty. When you're ready to talk about what actually happened, I'm here. Then I hit send. Simple. Clean. True. An hour later, no reply. That was fine. Silence, I was learning, is not always danger. Sometimes it's space. Space where people sit with their own discomfort. Space where growth either happens or it doesn't. I can't control that. What I can control is where I place myself while they figure it out. And this time I was choosing to stand outside the blast zone. In the afternoon, I went back to work. Emails. Tasks. Preens. Regular life. But something inside me kept replaying pieces of the family meeting. The looks. The words. The moments where the old version of me would have folded, apologized, backtracked, and didn't. I realized something important. For so long, I'd confused compliance with love. I believed that if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, agreeable enough, someday they'd turn around and say, "We see you." But people who benefit from your invisibility rarely volunteer to give you your shape back. Sometimes you have to take it. That night, Tasha found me scrolling through apartment listings on my laptop. "You moving?" she asked casually, like she was asking whether I wanted tea. I hesitated. Maybe not now. But one day, I want a place that's truly mine, where I don't feel like I'm living half for me and half for their expectations. She nodded. That's not running away. That's choosing a life. Her words landed in my bones. Choosing a life. Not escaping one. There's a difference. Later, I journaled. Not because I'm naturally someone who journals. Honestly, I used to hate it. But lately, writing felt like sweeping debris out of my head. I wrote about growing up. About how praise always felt conditional. About the way my achievements were celebrated only when they made the family look good. About how often I'd been told, "Be grateful," when what they really meant was, "Be quiet." I wrote until my hand cramped and the edges of the page curled with pressure. When I finally closed the notebook, I felt steadier. Like I'd taken some of the noise out of my chest and placed it somewhere safe. That night, before sleeping, I checked my phone one last time. No response from my aunt. Couple of memes from Tasha. A reminder from my bank app. Ordinary things. For once, I didn't feel like I was bracing for another emotional collision. I turned off the light, lay on my back, listened to the faint hum of the city, and a thought drifted across my mind, quiet and clear. Maybe this is what growing up actually feels like. Less drama, more clarity, less chasing, more choosing. I didn't chase the thought. I just let it sit with me. And then, gently, sleep arrived. Not heavy. Not restless. Just there. Like something that finally trusted me to rest. The next few days felt strangely quiet. Not the uncomfortable, suffocating quiet I had known growing up, where silence meant tension and everyone tiptoed around unspoken landmines. This was a different quiet. Clean one. A quiet that gave me room to think, to breathe, to notice myself without immediately shrinking. Every morning, I woke up and waited to feel the old panic rise, that urge to fix, to smooth things over, to rush into the middle like a firefighter who never asked if the building was even worth saving. But it didn't come. Instead, there was a steady kind of calm. Uneasy at first. Then familiar. On the third day, my phone finally buzzed with my aunt's name. A long message. Kind that makes the screen fill up. My chest tightened. I opened it slowly. "I've been thinking," she wrote. I didn't realize how hurtful that situation was for you. I shouldn't have taken something meant for you and acted like it was mine to give. I'm sorry. I really am. I read the words again. Not perfect. Not poetic. But honest in a way I had never heard from her. For a moment my eyes stung. Not because everything was suddenly healed, but because the apology existed at all. 'Cause someone had finally chosen truth over pride. I typed back carefully. Thank you for saying that. Mattered to me more than you know. We can move forward. But next time, let's talk before something like that happens. Send. Simple. Adult. Boundaries without bitterness. Later, as I was washing dishes, I realized something else. If I hadn't spoken up, this never would have happened. The old pattern would have repeated. Hurt. Silence. Pretend. Reset. And I would have carried it alone. That thought felt both empowering and heavy. Because now I knew, sometimes peace isn't the absence of conflict. Sometimes peace is what comes after the hard conversation you avoided for 10 years. That evening, my dad called. His name lit up the screen like a warning light from my childhood. I let it ring twice. 3 times. Then I answered. His voice was careful. Hey, kiddo. Wanted to check in. My heartbeat slowed. Hi. We did the usual small talk. Weather. Work. Random updates. Then, like someone slowly approaching a fence, he said, Your aunt told me you two talked. I stayed quiet, letting him choose his words. Look, he said, clearing his throat. I know we don't always get things right. Sometimes we think we're protecting people when really we're avoiding hard stuff. A pause. I'm glad you spoke up. Those 5 words landed heavier than any lecture he had ever given me. Not because they erased the past. They didn't. But because, for once, he wasn't defending. Or minimizing. Or turning it into a joke. He was acknowledging. That was new territory. After the call, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall like it might reveal the secrets of the universe. Growing up, I believed confronting family meant breaking it. Like honesty was dynamite and the only choices were silence or explosion. But here I was, still intact. Maybe even sturdier. And I wondered how many years I had spent building imaginary cages out of other people's discomfort. Work became easier, too. I wasn't dragging invisible weight through every task. I finished a project early. My boss noticed. You seem more focused lately, she said. I smiled to myself. I'm learning how to stop carrying things that aren't mine. She laughed, not knowing how literal that statement was. Till it felt good to say out loud, even in code. That weekend, I met Tasha for coffee at our usual spot, the one with the squeaky chairs and the barista who always spells names wrong. We sat outside. Breezy air. Warm mugs. Real conversation. She listened while I caught her up on everything. The apology. The call. The shift I felt inside my chest. You're rewiring your nervous system, she said. For years, your body thought conflict meant danger. Now it's learning that truth can be safe. I rolled my eyes because it sounded like therapy language. But also, yes. Exactly yes. On the walk home, I noticed details I usually missed. The smell of someone grilling. Kids shouting with pure joy. The uneven crack in the sidewalk shaped like a lightning bolt. All these tiny things that had always been there, living quietly while I spent my life scanning rooms for emotional weather changes. It hit me then. When you stop monitoring everyone else's storms, the world becomes bigger, brighter, more yours. That night, I did something I rarely did. I cooked myself dinner not because it was practical, but because I wanted something that tasted like care. I put music on. Chopped vegetables. Let things simmer instead of rushing. Felt strangely intimate. Like I was beginning a relationship with myself that had been delayed for years because I was busy auditioning for approval. Before sleeping, I checked my messages one more time. My aunt had sent a short follow-up. "Thanks for giving me a chance to fix this." I typed back, "Thanks for wanting to." Then I placed my phone face down, turned off the lamp, and lay quietly. A sentence came to mind, soft but firm. "You don't have to live inside other people's lessons anymore." And with that thought, my breath slowed, my shoulders unclenched, and the room felt like a place I belonged. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't rehearsing future defenses. I wasn't replaying old arguments. I wasn't shrinking to fit in invisible spaces. I was just here, present. And the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace I had earned. The following week brought something I didn't expect. Not drama. Not explosion. Not another round of guilt messages. Instead, there was this steady ripple effect. Like dropping a stone into a lake and realizing the water keeps moving long after the sound disappears. My aunt called my mom. I didn't hear the conversation, but I could feel the shift. My mother's texts got shorter. Not cold. Just cautious. Like she was standing in a room where the furniture had been rearranged and couldn't quite sit down yet. One afternoon, she finally wrote, "I heard what you said." That was it. No apology. No explanation. No defensiveness. Just acknowledgement. Younger me would have grabbed that thread, pulled hard, begged for more. Now I simply replied, "Thank you." 'Cause sometimes that's the first brick. And pushing too fast can collapse the whole wall. Work was busy. Good busy. I stayed late a few nights, not because I was trying to outrun emotions, but because I genuinely cared about what I was building. My boss stopped by my desk while I was editing a layout. "You've changed," she said casually. "In a good way. You take up more space." I blinked at that. Take up space. A phrase that would have terrified me once. Growing up, I learned a different rule. Be small. Be convenient. Don't disturb the peace, even if the peace is suffocating you. Hearing the opposite felt like sunlight hitting a room I'd always kept dark. On Friday, I had dinner with a few coworkers. Nothing special. Pasta. Laughter. Stories about terrible landlords and weird first dates. But somewhere between the garlic bread and the dessert, I realized I wasn't censoring myself every 5 seconds. I wasn't scanning faces for disapproval. I wasn't calculating whether my presence was too much. I just existed. And nobody flinched. Nobody punished me. The world did not crack open. Simply adjusted. Later that night, on my way home, I scrolled back through old photos out of curiosity. Birthdays. Holidays. Gatherings. In frame after frame, I noticed something I had never fully admitted. I was always on the edge. Literally and emotionally. Holding coats. Taking pictures. Cleaning up plates. Supporting everything without ever really being in the center of anything. My chest tightened. Then loosened. Not from bitterness this time. From clarity. You can't heal what you refuse to look at. And for the first time, I was looking straight at it without turning away. Saturday morning, my aunt asked if we could meet. Neutral ground, a quiet cafe by the river. She arrived early. Hands wrapped around her cup like she needed the warmth to stay steady. "I don't want to make excuses," she began. "But I want you to understand what was going through my head." I nodded. Not to absolve her. Just to listen. She talked about pressure, about family habits, about the way money was always used like glue and bandages and sometimes weapons. She admitted that when she took the gift, she told herself you wouldn't mind. That you were the strong one. My throat tightened. There it was again. The label that had followed me like a shadow. Being the strong one hurt me, I said quietly. It made people think I didn't need care. She swallowed. I see that now. And for once, instead of explaining, justifying, or turning it back on me, she sat with the discomfort. That, more than anything, felt like growth. When I left the cafe, the sky was heavy with clouds, like rain was thinking about it. I walked slowly, hands in pockets, breathing in the cold air. I realized something that nearly stopped me mid-step. My revenge, if you could even call it that, wasn't fire. It wasn't humiliation. It wasn't a dramatic expose. It was truth. Boundaries. Choosing myself without asking permission. And somehow that was louder than any explosion I could have made. That evening I cooked again. Same playlist. Same rhythm. Except this time I paused halfway through chopping and laughed at myself. Who knew healing could look like onions and olive oil and quiet music in a tiny kitchen? I sat down to eat, not scrolling, not distracting myself, actually tasting the food. My phone buzzed once. "Mom." "I'm thinking," she wrote. "I'll call you soon." No timeline. No promises. Just an opening. And strangely, that was enough. Before bed, I wrote a few lines in my journal, something my therapist had suggested. Today didn't feel like I was fighting, I wrote. It felt like I was finally standing. Then I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and let the dark room hold me gently instead of swallowing me whole. A quiet thought drifted in before sleep. Maybe this is what growing up inside your own life feels like. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just choosing yourself in small, consistent ways until one day you look around and realize the ground you're standing on is finally yours. The call came 2 days later. Not late at night. Not in the middle of some dramatic storm. Just Tuesday afternoon. I was answering emails when my phone lit up with "Mom." For a second, my hand hovered over the screen. Old muscle memory told me to brace, to shrink, to get ready to smooth things over. New me simply exhaled and pressed accept. Her voice was softer than I expected. Not sugary. Not rehearsed. Just tired. "I've been thinking," she said. The words moved slowly, like she was carrying something heavy. "About what you said. About the gift. About other things, too." I leaned back in my chair, staring at a small crack in the ceiling, grounding myself. "Okay," I said. Not attacking. Not rescuing. Just opening the door. She talked. Not perfectly. Not cleanly. The sentences came out crooked. Sometimes defensive, sometimes honest, sometimes confused. She said she didn't realize how often she had asked me to be understanding. How many times she had labeled me strong instead of asking if I was tired. How she had convinced herself that because I didn't complain, I didn't hurt. There were still justifications woven in, comments about stress, money, family expectations, but for the first time they weren't shields. They were background. "I didn't want to see it," she admitted quietly. "Because if I saw it, I'd have to see myself." That sentence landed like a stone in my chest. Not because it fixed anything, but because it was finally true. "I can't change what already happened," she continued. "I know that. And I don't expect you to snap your fingers and forgive." There was a pause. A breath. "But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to keep pretending everything is fine when it isn't." My throat tightened. This was the conversation I had imagined 1,000 times growing up. Except in my fantasies, it was perfect, cinematic, drenched in apologies and dramatic realizations. Real life was messier. But it was also more real. "I don't want to pretend either," I said. "And I don't want to keep being the one who absorbs all the damage so everyone else stays comfortable. I'm done with that role." The silence on the line wasn't empty this time. It was listening. Then came something I never expected to hear. "I'm sorry," she said. Not the half apology, not the "I'm sorry you feel that way," not the deflection. Just 2 words, raw and unclothed. "I'm sorry for the ways I made you feel invisible. I'm sorry I didn't protect you when I should have. I'm sorry I told myself you were fine because it was easier than changing. I closed my eyes. Tears slid down without force, not dramatic sobs, just quiet release. Thank you, I whispered. Not because everything was healed. Not because pain evaporated. But because the truth had finally been named. We didn't magically fix decades of patterns in one call. We didn't suddenly transform into a flawless mother-daughter duo who shared bracelets and inside jokes. But we started drawing a new map. One with boundaries. One where my comfort mattered. One where love didn't look like self-erasure. I want to see you, she said before we hung up. Not the version that keeps everyone else from feeling guilty. You. Then don't look away, I replied gently. And for once, she didn't. After we ended the call, I sat there for a long time, phone in my lap, room quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. Part of me expected to feel triumphant, like I'd won something. Instead, I felt steady. Like a knot had loosened somewhere deep in my ribs. Healing wasn't a fireworks show. It was a soft rearranging of weight inside your chest. That evening, I took a walk with no destination in mind. The city felt different, though nothing had changed except me noticing it. Kids laughed near a playground. Someone practiced guitar badly on a balcony. Couple argued lovingly about directions. Life kept moving, uncaring and miraculous. I realized how much of it I had missed while rehearsing speeches in my head that were never going to be heard. For the first time, I wasn't living inside a courtroom where I was always defending my right to exist. I was just walking. I passed a small jewelry shop I'd never noticed before. In the window, there was a simple silver ring, nothing loud, nothing flashy. Just solid and understated. Kind of thing you wear not to show off, but to remind yourself of something. I went inside, asked to see it, slipped it onto my finger. It fit like it had been quietly waiting. I bought it without overthinking. Not retail therapy. Not a consolation prize. Promise. To myself, not to disappear again inside other people's comfort. On the way home, I caught my reflection in a shop window. Same face. Same eyes. Same person. And yet, not the same at all. There was a softness I didn't recognize before. Not weakness. Relief. Like I had stopped clenching every muscle just to stay upright. I whispered, barely audible, I'm still here. And for once, it didn't sound like a plea. It sounded like a fact. That night, before bed, I scrolled back to the message that had started everything. The moment I said, we need to talk. It was wild how such a small sentence could open a door that had been painted shut for years. I didn't regret sending it. I didn't regret choosing discomfort over silence. I didn't regret stepping out of the role I had been assigned before I even learned to speak. Because in the end, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about winning. It was about not abandoning myself anymore. And somewhere between those thoughts and sleep, a strange calm settled in. Not the numb kind I used to mistake for peace. A real one. The kind that hums quietly under your skin and says, you're allowed to be here. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to walk away from tables where love is rationed and respect is optional. You're allowed to start again, even if your voice shakes the first 100 times you say no. Tomorrow would bring new conversations, new boundaries, maybe even new conflicts. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of them. 'Cause I finally trusted the person who would be standing on my side when they came, me. The next weekend, I drove back to my hometown. Not for some dramatic confrontation, but not to declare war. Just to collect the pieces of my life that still lived there. Old documents. A few boxes. The version of me that believed silence was safety. The streets looked smaller than I remembered. Grocery stores that once felt enormous now seemed ordinary. Even the house I grew up in, that towering monument of authority, looked like what it really was. Bricks. Windows. A roof. Place. Not a throne. Not a judge. Just a house. My aunt's car was parked out front. For a split second, the old reflex surged. Shrink, apologize, explain. Then it fizzled. I rang the bell. My cousin opened the door. Her eyes widened for half a second, then softened. Hey, she said. Word. Human. Not royal. Come in. My aunt stood in the kitchen. She froze when she saw me, like someone had paused her mid-sentence. Then she smiled, the polite version, the one that had always meant we're not going to talk about this. I didn't step into that script. I pulled out a chair. I sat. Calm. Not angry. Not begging. Just there. We should talk, I said. The words landed differently than they used to. Not like a threat. Like a boundary. She inhaled, long and careful. I know, she said. And for the first time in my entire life, she didn't launch into excuses. She didn't start with, you have to understand. She didn't reach for a story that would make her the hero. She just looked at me. Like she was finally willing to see the person standing across from her. She admitted more than I expected. Not in a dramatic confession. In small, trembling truths. She said she had always wanted to be the one people admired. The one who did things big. The one who looked generous. She said taking the credit for my gift felt easy in the moment and ugly afterward. She said she hoped I wouldn't notice. And then she said something I didn't expect at all. I didn't think you'd fight for yourself. You never do. That sentence didn't sting the way she probably imagined. Clarified. Drew a circle around the real problem. Not just what she did. What they believed about me. That I was safe to use. That I would quietly absorb the cost. That I would never disrupt the story. I'm not that person anymore, I said. Not angry. Not shaking. Just steady. If you ever do something like that again, we're done. I'm not here to make you look generous. I'm not background. Her eyes filled with tears. Not manipulative. Not theatrical. Real. I deserved that, she whispered. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. Healing isn't a courtroom. There are no verdicts. Just choices. She stood, disappeared into her bedroom, and came back holding a small envelope. Inside was cash. $500. The exact amount I had spent. I know this doesn't fix the disrespect, she said. But it's yours. It should have been from the start. Old me would have refused out of pride, trying to take the moral high ground and carry yet another wound. New me took it. Not as compensation. As correction. As acknowledgement of reality. Thank you, I said. Calm. Adult. Cool. My cousin watched the whole thing with wide, quiet eyes. When my aunt left the room, she leaned closer. I didn't know, she said. She told everyone it was from her. I just thought, her voice faded. I smiled gently. It's not your fault. But pay attention. To patterns. To what people celebrate. She nodded slowly, like someone marking a page in a book they finally want to read. Later, I packed my old things from the bedroom that had once belonged to me. Faded trophies. Pool notebooks. A box of letters. Souvenirs from a girl who tried so hard to earn space she already deserved by existing. I found a photo of me at 8 years old, half hidden behind my cousin at some party, smiling too wide, trying too hard. I didn't feel pity for her. I felt protective. Like I wanted to step into the picture and whisper into her ear. One day you will stop auditioning. One day you will stop mistaking crumbs for meals. One day you will sit at your own table. Before leaving, I stood for a moment in the doorway of the living room. Family voices drifted through the house. Familiar. Unchanged. But I was changed. I didn't need them to rewrite history to move forward. I just needed to stop editing myself out of it. As I drove away, the highway opened wide in front of me. Not metaphorically, literally. A long stretch of road, sunlight flickering on the windshield, the steady hum of the engine beneath my hands. I thought about all the times I had gone home feeling smaller. This time I felt proportionate. Not inflated. Not deflated. Just right-sized in my own life. When I got back to my apartment, I put the envelope in a drawer. Not as a treasure. As a reminder. That I can name harm. That I can refuse to carry shame that doesn't belong to me. That I can ask for repair without begging for love. I brewed tea. Sat on the couch. Listened to the quiet. No buzzing anxiety. No rehearsed arguments. Just stillness. That night I wrote something in my journal. Not a speech. Not a manifesto. Just one line. Respect is not a reward. It is a requirement. I underlined it twice. Then I closed the notebook and turned off the light. The darkness didn't feel threatening anymore. Felt like a room I finally trusted myself to stand in. A few weeks later, the universe decided to test everything I'd learned. Not with a dramatic betrayal. Not with screaming or slammed doors. With something much quieter. A family dinner. My mom invited me carefully. Not with guilt. Not with pressure. Just, we're having dinner Sunday. I'd like you there if you feel up to it. Those last words stood out. If you feel up to it. Choice. I said yes. Not to prove anything. Not to keep peace. Just because it felt right. The house smelled like roasted chicken and garlic when I walked in. For a moment, old memories tried to drag me backward. Holidays where I cooked and washed dishes while everyone else laughed. Nights where I felt invisible in rooms filled with people who claimed to love me. But something had shifted. I wasn't walking into a performance. I was walking into a room as myself. My aunt was there. She looked nervous, like she didn't know where to place her hands. Our eyes met. She offered a small nod. No grand apology. No speech. Just acknowledgement. It was enough. We sat down to eat. Conversation moved awkwardly at first, like everyone was relearning how to talk without stepping on unspoken landmines. My mom asked about my job. Not to compare. Not to judge. Just to ask. My dad listened more than he spoke, which was new. My cousin helped set the table. No one hinted that I should do it because I was the responsible one. Small changes. Quiet shifts. The kind that most people wouldn't notice. But I noticed. 'Cause I had spent years learning to survive off crumbs. Now I could finally taste the difference between crumbs and food. Partway through dinner, my aunt cleared her throat. The room stilled. She didn't look at anyone except me. I've been working on not making everything about appearances, she said. Slow. Thoughtful. Humble. It turns out it's harder than I thought. But I'm trying. I nodded. Trying matters, I said. And I meant it. Healing doesn't always show up like fireworks. Sometimes it's just someone choosing not to hide behind the same old excuses. Later, when dessert was finished and everyone drifted into small pockets of conversation, I stepped outside for air. The sky was deep blue, the kind of color that only shows up right before night fully settles. My mom joined me after a minute. She didn't hover. She just stood nearby, arms crossed loosely, like someone learning how to share space without taking it over. I've been thinking, she said. A familiar preface. But the tone was new. For a long time, I believed that if I kept the family together, then I'd done my job. I never stopped to ask what together actually meant, or who had to disappear to make it look that way. The honesty hit deeper than any apology could. I can't promise I won't slip, she added. But if I do, I want you to tell me. Not quietly. Not later. In the moment. I don't want you disappearing again. I exhaled slowly. Deal, I said. Simple. Direct. Real. Driving home that night, the road didn't feel like escape anymore. Felt like return. Not to them. To myself. I realized something as the city lights came into view. Boundaries aren't walls that keep everyone out. They are doors you learn to lock and unlock with intention. They are the difference between being trapped and being home. When I walked into my apartment, the ring I had bought that day glinted in the lamplight. I twisted it gently with my thumb and thought about who I used to be. The girl who bought expensive gifts hoping they would buy her belonging. The woman who believed silence was safer than honesty. The version of me who sat in corners at family parties feeling like a placeholder in her own life. I didn't hate her. I didn't judge her. She did what she needed to survive. But I wasn't living there anymore. I poured a glass of water, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Not to scroll through other people's perfect lives. Not to drown in distraction. To write. Not a speech. Not a rant. A reminder. Love without respect is just performance, I typed. Generosity without honesty is just decoration. And family without safety is just strangers with shared photographs. I reread the words. They didn't feel bitter. They felt clean. Like air after a storm. Before bed, I checked my phone out of habit. A new message from my aunt. No emojis. No glitter. Just, thank you for not giving up on yourself. It taught me something. I stared at that for a long moment. There it was again. Not validation. Not praise. Reflection. Proof that choosing myself didn't destroy everything. It rearranged it. I turned off the lights. Crawled under the covers. My body felt heavier in a good way. Anchored. Present. For the first time in years, I didn't rehearse imaginary conversations before sleep. I didn't replay every moment of dinner searching for mistakes. I didn't question whether I had done too much or too little. I just breathed. Slow. Even. Free. And somewhere between one breath and the next, I realized something quietly profound. The real revenge everyone always imagines, the dramatic speech, the mic drop, the walkout, wasn't the point. The real power was this. Knowing that I no longer had to audition. Knowing that if someone tried to turn me invisible again, I would simply step back into the light myself. No permission required. Months passed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just life happening. Work. Groceries. Laundry. Therapy sessions that sometimes felt like digging through old basements. Occasional dinners with family that didn't end in emotional hangovers. Quiet walks where my thoughts no longer chased me like dogs with teeth. Healing didn't arrive with trumpets. It arrived like morning light, so gradual you don't notice until suddenly the room is bright. One afternoon, I was cleaning out my closet when I found an old shoebox tucked behind a stack of blankets. Inside were artifacts from a life I had tried too hard to earn. Birthday cards with generic messages. Photos where I was half cropped out. Notes that praised me for being reliable, helpful, such a rock. Not one card that said, "You look happy." Not one that said, "Are you okay?" I sat on the floor, the shoebox open beside me, and realized that for years I had confused usefulness with love. If I gave enough, if I smiled enough, if I stayed quiet enough, maybe they'd see me. Maybe I'd finally be allowed to take up space. But that strategy had a price. And I had been the one paying it. Later that week, something unexpected happened. My aunt invited me for coffee. Public place. Neutral territory. She arrived without her usual armor. No loud stories, no dramatic gestures. Just a paper cup, tired eyes, and a sincerity that felt unfamiliar. "I want to show you something," she said, sliding her phone across the table. It was a draft email, addressed to herself. A letter she had written and rewritten but never sent. In it, she admitted everything. Not just the gift, but the pattern, the favoritism, the theater, the way she had built her identity around being admired, even if it meant stepping on people she loved. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said quietly. "I'm learning how to tell the truth, even when no one is watching." There was no spotlight, no applause, just honesty, fragile and brave. "That matters," I said. And I meant it. A few days later, another shift. My mom called, laughing softly. Not nervously. Just human. "Guess what I did?" she asked. "I told your aunt no. She wanted me to help her organize some ridiculous party, and I told her I'm resting that weekend." I smiled. Not because I secretly wanted my aunt to struggle, but because I realized something bigger. Healing is contagious. When one person stops playing the rigged game, the entire table wobbles. People either cling harder, or they learn to stand differently. But the real turning point came the night of my cousin's engagement dinner. A fancy place. White tablecloths. Too many forks. The kind of event that used to make me feel like an extra in someone else's movie. I almost didn't go. Not out of bitterness. Out of caution. But then I remembered, I wasn't walking into this as the old version of me. I chose a simple dress. Not to impress. Not to disappear. Just to be comfortable. When I arrived, my aunt hugged me. Not possessively. Not performatively. Just briefly, like someone grateful I showed up. We sat. We ate. We talked. And then something surreal happened. My cousin raised her glass. "Before we move on," she said, turning toward me, "I want to thank someone." Every eye turned. My chest tensed instinctively. Old reflex. But she smiled softly. "Years ago, you gave me a gift I didn't know how to appreciate. Not the tablet. The way you showed up. Consistently. Quietly. Kindly. I get it now. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see you." A hush moved through the table. No rehearsed speech. No drama. Just truth. My aunt didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said enough. And something inside my chest finally, gently, unclenched all the way. Driving home, the road felt familiar and new at the same time. Like revisiting a town you once escaped, only to realize it no longer has the power to cage you. I rolled down the window. Night air rushed in. City lights blurred. For years, I thought closure meant making them feel what I felt. Understanding my pain. Apologizing perfectly. But closure turned out to be quieter. It was choosing not to contort myself into shapes that fit their comfort. It was walking into rooms without shrinking. It was letting people face their reflection without carrying the mirror for them. When I got home, I lit a candle. Not for ritual. For presence. I sat on the floor, leaned against the couch, and whispered something into the dim air. "Thank you," I told the younger versions of me. The girl who smiled when she wanted to cry. Teenager who accepted being second, third, sometimes last. The woman who tried to earn love by disappearing. "You kept me alive," I said. "But I'll take it from here." The words felt like a promise sealed in my own bones. Weeks turned into months. Seasons shifted. Life moved. There were still arguments. Misunderstandings. Moments where old patterns tried to sneak back in. But I wasn't the same player on the board anymore. If someone crossed a line, I named it. Calm. Clear. No apology for existing. And something incredible kept happening. People adjusted. Not because I forced them, 'Cause I stopped participating in my own erasure. Sometimes I still think about the tablet, the gift, that moment when everything snapped into focus. I used to replay it like a wound. Now I see it differently. It wasn't the betrayal that changed my life. It was the boundary I built after. It was the decision to stop narrating my own absence like a love story. It was choosing myself, not as revenge, as survival, as truth. And here's the part one never expected. Once I stopped chasing their approval, I made room for people who didn't need to be convinced I mattered. Friends who listened. Coworkers who respected me. Partner who asked what I needed instead of telling me who to be. People who saw me without me having to vanish first. Turns out, belonging isn't something you earn with sacrifice. Something that meets you where you are and says, sit, eat. You don't have to audition. If there's one thing this whole story taught me, it's this. Family is not the people who can take the most from you while smiling. Family is the people who notice when you disappear and ask you to come back as yourself, not as furniture. And love, the real kind, never asks you to become smaller so someone else can shine brighter. They once taught me that my worth depended on how much I could give away. Today I carry a different lesson. I can give. I can care. I can show up. But I do not vanish. Not for tradition. Not for appearances. Not for fragile egos dressed up as family values. I don't need anyone to steal my gifts to feel grand. I don't need to stay silent to keep the peace. I don't need to choose invisibility to be loved. They chose appearances for a long time. Ich chose myself. And in the end, that wasn't revenge at all. That was freedom.